Hello friends! Thank you for being here today. My name is Sato from Satopin. Today I am going to do a March and April wrap-up. So March was a bad reading month for me. I hit a reading slump, so I only read 3 books, so I didn't think it was good enough to do a wrap-up on its own, so I decided to just put March and April together, and so here I am to talk about the books I read in the last 2 months. First of all, before we begin talking about the books, I just want to check in with my reading goal for this year. So my goal for this year is to read 50 books, which I have never done, I think, in my life. I think I've only done it once, so this is a goal that I kind of want to accomplish this year. So if I combine March and April, I read 2,770 pages and I read 7 books in total. Excuse me. 5 of them were physical books, 1 was an audiobook and 1 was an ebook. I only own 1 of the book and everything else is from the library or a script. In total, I have read 21 books so far. So I am on track because we are only on week 17 out of 52. So yes, I'm on track. Okay, going into the first read of March, I read Lobizona by Romina Garber. I think I just came across this book because I don't even remember where. I think on like Bookstagram or something, someone posted this book cover and I thought it was beautiful. I had no idea what this book was about except that it's about a girl with special identity, so I picked it up from the library. So this book is about Manu, who is living in the US in Miami, Florida with her mom and like a woman, older lady who's letting them live with her because they are living there illegally, like they don't have a visa or a green card or anything. Manu is kind of in fear all the time of being captured and deported, so she is taught to live in fear and like hidden in the apartment. In all her life, she has been told that she has special eyes, which is true because her eyes have like, her irises are yellow suns and her pupils are silver stars. That's how it's described in the book. And her mom told her because of that, people are out there looking for her or hunting her, whatever it is. So she, on top of being scared of being deported, she's scared of that as well. So she's just like basically just hiding herself away to protect herself and her mom. One day she finds out what her eyes actually mean, and this is where her story begins. But yeah, very interesting read. It's a YA read full of magic, adventures. I had mixed feelings after finishing it. I wasn't like amazed or blown away by the book, but it did, I appreciate that it gave me things to think about, like what it means to be illegal in a country. Other than that, it also covered topics like gender, identity, immigration, sexism. So yeah, it covers like a wide variety of topics that I think are important, and I like that the book addressed it in such an interesting way. The one thing that bothered me when I was reading this book is that the author kept making references because Manu loves to read since she's stuck at home all the time and she's being homeschooled, she's reading all the time, and she keeps making references to other books like oh, Harry Potter wouldn't do this, or in Hogwarts it was like this, and there were like multiple times when Harry Potter was referenced, and it kind of got to the point where it was kind of annoying. I'm like, okay, I get the idea that you're a fan of Harry Potter, but you don't have to keep referencing it. So that was like a tiny little thing that I didn't enjoy. At the end, I gave this book 3 stars out of 5. Okay, so the second book I read in March is A Wish in the Dark by Christina Soontornvat. I think I gushed about this book in one of my vlogs. This book I found because I was randomly looking up authors that are local, like in Austin, Texas, or Texas in general, and I found this book. I saw this book cover in the list and I just fell in love with the illustrations, so I immediately got it from the library and I loved it. So the author I thought was really cool. She is part Thai. So this book itself is Thai-inspired middle grade fantasy, and it's kind of loosely based around Les Mis. That introduction alone is like intriguing enough. It kind of gave me like Raya and the Last Dragon vibes because I just watched that movie as I was reading this book, and I thought I just kept making the same connections to the movie. So yeah, that was pretty cool. I don't want to say much about this other than that. It's just very magical. I grew attached to the characters. There's Pong, Nook, and Ampai. Yeah, the 3 characters, the main characters, and it made me smile at the end. I love the sweet friendships that was in the book. I like that even though it's middle grade, it still tackles important issues like poverty and wealth distribution, privilege, unfairness, and like it brings up the questions if you do notice there's injustice in the world, like are you willing to stand up for it? So yeah, just such a powerful book. One of my top favorite reads of this year. And another cool fact, I think I said this before too, but the author also lives in Austin, Texas, so I'm just like excited about that she lives in the same city as me. So pretty cool. I gave this book 5 stars out of 5. Just like a little thing, like if you're looking for a book by an Asian author with Asian characters for Asian readathon, because May is coming up, you could read this book too. So yeah, there you go. Okay, and the third and last book I read in March was 84 Charring Crossroad by Helen Hanff. This book is a really short read. It's only 97 pages, so it's like really thin. Last time I couldn't remember why I put this book on hold, and it's because of Noelle. I think she was talking about how she loved this book and it touched her heart or something like that in one of her videos, and that's what made me put this book on hold. And I don't regret it. So good, and it's like so short, so you could read it in one sitting, which is what happened to me. So basically this book is a true it's not even a story, it's kind of hard to describe. It's a non-fiction. It's a collection of letters that have been collected throughout the years between a writer in New York, her name is Helen, and that's the author of this book, and then a used book dealer in London called Frank. And it's just kind of them writing back and forth for 20 years, and it's just kind of following their relationship and how it grows into a friendship, and it turns into more than just a business correspondence. Like, I don't know, like it's just really sweet. At the end you're kind of like, wow, like these are real letters, like this actually happened. So yes, I'm just gonna leave it at that. I loved this book. I gave this book 4 stars out of 5. Okay, moving on to the April reads. First book was an audiobook, The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. I have no reading notes on this book, so I'm gonna try my best to describe this book. I remember there is a female and male co-workers. They are always like battling each other because they want to get a higher position, and they're being mean to each other. So I guess it's like a trope where, you know, they hate each other and then they turn it around. It's a romance book, if you cannot tell, and I gave this book 3.5 out of 5 stars because it wasn't the best romance book. I thought it was just kind of like okay. You could predict what's gonna happen, and I didn't like the characters. Like, I did not find them likable. The guy was kind of annoying to me. I don't know, he was just being such a mean person to the girl for so long, and I was just like, ugh. 3.5 out of 5 stars. The Hating Game. All right, moving on. So the next book I read was The Three Mothers by Anna Malika Tubbs. This is the only book that I own out of this whole wrap up. I found out about this book because I was listening to Jonathan Van Ness's podcast, and he has a podcast where he interviews people and he asks questions that he's like dying to know more about, and I love it because I'm a curious person too by nature, and I love learning with him. And one of the podcasts, he was interviewing this author about this book, and the book just came out. So as soon as I listened to the podcast, I had to go to Barnes & Noble to pick up this book, and I did not take notes, but I literally just read it and underlined parts, put post-its everywhere that I thought was important. So basically the author started researching for this book because she was saying how the 3 men, so Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and James Baldwin, they're well known. Like, everybody knows them. But how come we don't know about the mothers who raised them to be the men they became? And so when she said that, I was like, that's so true. That is so true. So I had to just I wanted to find out right away, like, about the moms and how they raised their sons to be who they were later on in life. This book was really interesting. Like, it took me a while to read just because I really wanted to take my time and learn from this book. I learned so much about Black history in general, not just about these people's life, but Black history in general, and how it has evolved over the years in different ways. Like, it starts from the grandparents when they were enslaved, and then all the way to like today. So it just follows them all throughout the years. Yeah, it is just so educational. I think it's just an important book to read overall. So I highly recommend this book. I gave this 5 stars out of 5. It's one of my favorite books now, and I'm glad I have it on my bookshelf. Okay, the next book I read was Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. I did a whole vlog on this. Right now I'm trying to get back into fantasy, and this is the first book I picked to try to get back into fantasy. I said it in my vlog as well, but Carrie from Carrie Can Read loves this book, and she was like gushing about it, and that's the reason why I picked this book. No, I wasn't expecting much going into it because it's a YA fantasy, and I was like, it's gonna be okay. But I actually ended up loving the book. Like, I loved Silas, one of the characters. I loved there were like magical libraries, there's action scenes, there's a mystery. For a standalone fantasy, it does so well because it doesn't like rush things. It also doesn't drag things. Like, it's a perfect paced fantasy book. You know, there's a whole world in there and all that, but it doesn't describe it in a confusing way. You can get into the world really easily, and I had such a fun time reading this book, and it made me want to read more fantasy books, and that was my goal. So it did the job perfectly, and yeah, I just love it. I said in the vlog as well, but Carrie describes this book as dark academia, house moving castle. And again, did I mention magical libraries, talking books, and sword fighting? Yes, the main character, Elizabeth, fights with sword. She's not afraid to fight, and there are demons. Yeah, it's just so fun. It's just a fun read, and I gave this 5 stars out of 5, and now it's one of my favorites as well. And the most recent book I finished was If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha. This is again a short read, but basically this book follows 5 women in South Korea, Seoul, South Korea, and it basically explores what it means to be a woman in Korea and the crazy beauty standards there. Plastic surgery is mentioned, and it also explores like crazy expectations for women in Korea as well. And it was relatable for me because a lot of the cultural references in the book were very similar to Japan, so it was very relatable, and I found it really interesting to read about. It wasn't a perfect read, and it was a bit short, and I ended up wanting more from it, but I still recommend it. Very interesting read. And again, if you're looking for more books to read for Asian Readathon, you could put this book up in there. So I gave this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. Alright, so everyone, these were my 7 reads for March and April combined. Let me know if you've read any of these books, or if you have any other recommendations based on the books that I loved, that I talked about in this video. As always, thank you for being here, and I'll see you next time.